made by Giannis, who is speaking his native language, which of course is Greek. This is a statement that I've never made before. If LeBron and Kevin Durant and Anthony Davis came to Milwaukee, I would have been good with that. I'm not interested if I'm at the top, second, or third name, okay? I'm 25. I want to win because when I retire, that's what people will remember. And if I got LeBron, KD, Davis, if all those come, I wouldn't mind at all. I don't care if I'm the top player on the team. Giannis can become an unrestricted free agent after this season. Stephen A., can you see Giannis staying with the Bucks? Because that quote makes it seem like that's what he intends on doing.
I can see him staying with the Bucks if indeed they would have ended up in the finals. Because I think that he'd realize that he's got a legitimate shot to win it all. And I think that's how he views it. Getting to the conference finals might be an accomplishment, but in the same breath, when you consider the questions that we've had about the Eastern Conference historically, it was a foregone conclusion that whoever came out of the East was going to lose to the powers in the West, whoever that team may be, whether it be Golden State or in last year's case, the Los Angeles Lakers. That's just how you view it. Toronto was an aberration because KD obviously got hurt and Klay Thompson went down in Game 6 despite having 30 in the third quarter. But when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks right now, if you're Giannis, if Middleton shows up and be that bona fide number 2 or number 3 now that Jrue Holiday is there, a career 45% shooter from the field, the 35+% shooter from three-point range, and considered one of the best two-way players and one of the elite defenders this game that exists in this game today. When you look at it from that perspective, there's really not much of an excuse for Milwaukee not to come out of the East, especially if James Harden doesn't end up in Brooklyn and join Kyrie and KD. So again, if they got to the finals, then I think Giannis ends up staying in Milwaukee, because when you come from Greece and when you know his background and you consider the profile, Max, that has been done on him and how poor his family was and some of the trials and tribulations that they endured, he's overcome an awful lot. And you know, when you come from a different nation and you come to this country, we might sit here and look at meaning Los Angeles, being significantly different than Milwaukee, et cetera, et cetera. But when you come from where he comes from, Milwaukee's damn near Southern California. So you know what? You don't particularly mind. No. And as a result of that, I think that the way they've treated him, the way they've embraced him, the way he has performed for them, I think under ideal circumstances, he'd love to stay in Milwaukee. But they've got to win, and I think they've got to come out of the East in order to keep him in Milwaukee long term.
First of all, Giannis' statement, Giannis is that dude. A back-to-back MVP talking about, I could be the 4th best player on the team. I'm trying to win championships. That's what people remember. He's absolutely right. He wants it to be in Milwaukee. I'm going to address what you just said. He's not going to stay in Milwaukee. And the reason he's not going to stay in Milwaukee was because there's a tide in the affairs of men, Stephen A., which, taken at the flood, lead on to great fortune, right? The Milwaukee Bucks ownership, those 3 investor guys who own the Milwaukee Bucks, decided to let Malcolm Brogdon walk out the door instead of paying like an enormous luxury tax bill by giving him a contract maybe he didn't deserve. The problem is this. What you said, let's take what you said about Giannis in Milwaukee and how he's from very desperate circumstances. Milwaukee looks really good to him. He doesn't care about, it's sunnier in LA or something. But the rest of the league does.
Well, if I'm James Harden, I'm waking up today saying, get me the hell out of here. Get me out. I need to go either to Philly. I need to go to Brooklyn. I need to get out of here because this is not what I signed up for. And I don't know if this makes me happy to be here in Houston long term. If I wake up and I'm Bradley Beal on the East Coast in D.C., I'm saying, I think we have a chance to be top 5 in the East right now. Getting Brody to come here to D.C., getting Davis Bertans to sign a 5-year, $80 million deal. This puts us almost in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. So, look, I now look at Houston and I say, John Wall, I hope he comes back and has an incredible year. Hasn't played since 2018, okay? He's injury prone coming off that injury. You have DeMarcus Cousins, injury prone coming off an injury. Now, that's an interesting team. If I'm Houston, if I'm Raphael Stone, how much longer can you hold on to James Harden without him publicly becoming a disgruntled employee? So if he's at a post presser every single day, when you know he's going to be asked this question over and over and over again, are you happy here? Eventually Harden's going to tell you how he feels. Do you lose trade value the longer you hold on to him? Or now are you starting to look at the Brooklyn situation and say, hey, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, some future first-round picks. Maybe that is enough for a guy like James Harden, because I feel like James Harden has given his heart and soul to Houston. James Harden deserves to have a shot at winning a world championship, and that will not occur in Houston. He has a better chance of doing that with Brooklyn or Philadelphia. Do the right thing for James Harden.
Do the right thing for James. Do the right thing for James. I look at it and say, you know what? This is kind of like for Westbrook going east and Wall going to Houston, they kind of just swapped contracts and players of that style to me. I mean, you get a healthy guy versus a guy that you really don't know a whole lot about unless they've had some private workouts of some sort on video where they've had an opportunity to see him bounce and run around where they can say, okay, I think we're getting the 2018 John Wall pre-injury, so we're okay with that. Boogie Cousins, on the other hand, we know what that, not only from an injury standpoint, but also from an in-shape standpoint, what that's going to look like. In terms of James Harden, and I've always said this, and I will continue to say it until I die, professional athletes, the moment that they tell organizations that they don't want to be there, the organization will try the best to move them. It just because you don't want to have a hostile situation inside of a locker room, especially with a young new head coach coming in to try to manage the situation. I don't care what he's done in his previous stops with certain athletes and personalities, but to have a new head coach come in and you have a disgruntled player, I don't want to call it disgruntled, a player that's just not really feeling what's going on because he's watching potentially what the Brooklyn Nets could be doing in James Harden or potentially what Philadelphia could be doing. And he's sitting back there saying, I could be a part of that, but you're holding me hostage when I don't want to be here. I think Raphael Stone will get around to figuring out how to move James Harden. You got to go one piece at a time. It's too much to try to, just to digest when you have to deal with Westbrook, which was probably the easier deal to get done, and you got Harden, both of them on the same table, and you trying to navigate through that. That's a lot. So you want to get one off the table. Now we could turn our attentions to James Harden and potentially a Philadelphia deal or potentially a Brooklyn Nets deal. You revisit that now and see where it goes.
Let me tell you this. Right now with John Wall, because of the injury, he slipped and fell at his home. He had a ruptured Achilles. I thought Dustin Johnson was the only guy that could use that as an excuse if you're a golf fan out there. But 3 years, $132 million. You don't exactly know what you're getting. You know Russ obviously is a huge deal that's worth more than $130 million left on his deal as well. But we know what we've gotten from Russell Westbrook. At this point, 3 years, $132. We don't know what we're going to get from Wall. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just know somebody else who slipped and fell and then was out of work for 2 days.
You almost got cussed out. Man,
What? He just... You slipped and fell at the house. You rolled your ankle. You're out for 2 days. That's all I'm saying.
DJ slipped and fell at Augusta. Key slipped and fell in Brooklyn. And John Wall did so in and around the district.
Because you're trying to sell a narrative to the people that's listening and looking as if I'm clumsy and non-athletic.
No, you're extremely athletic.
And I'm not going to have you doing that.
Your dog came underneath you and you didn't see him early in the morning. I'm just saying it happens. It's feasible. That's all.
No doubt. We're always having fun. So just quickly to go back, you don't know what you're going to get from Wall, as I mentioned, the 700 days, 3 years, 132. But let me ask you it from this particular standpoint, Jay, from an NBA perspective. The Wizards, this wasn't really talked about much because they haven't been talked about much. They were in the bubble. They played 8 games. They lost 7 of the 8 games. It basically took them to fifth wall was the Eastern Conference semifinals. I'm not pinning that on Wall. I'm just saying that this is a team that is there's a shot of adrenaline that needs to come into this team's arm. And
they just got it.
With somebody as exciting as Westbrook, playing at 100 miles an hour like Westbrook, the entertainment factor. I just think there's something there here for Washington, even though everybody's talking about what it means for Houston, the residual for Harden. For Washington, they need to be relevant, and this gives them some relevancy.
And first off, to all the haters out there, Key, everybody with all these different narratives, you were talking about narratives before. Well, Brody isn't a guy that helps the culture of your team. That's wrong. Brody does help the culture of your team. Let's talk about what happened to him. He started off slow this year, okay? Then he came on hot. Then he got COVID, missed some time in the bubble, came into the bubble, did decently to come in, and then had an injury to his hamstring. I want you to hear the numbers that he finished the regular season with. averaging 27, 8 rebounds per game, 7 assists, all NBA third team. Now you pair him with a guy like Bradley Beal that is one of the most prolific scorers we have in the game. Davis Bertans, another guy that shot 43% from the three-point line. The style and pace in which they're going to play in D.C., Eastern Conference is wide open. I mean, look, the Nets are probably the favorite. You know, you have Milwaukee who's there. You have the Celtics who are there. You have the Miami Heat. Even though I think last year was a little bit of an anomaly, I don't think the Miami Heat go to the World Championship if it's not in the bubble. He comes to the Hawks. They have the pieces, John. The council there. Trae Young is still there.
Rondo.